In December 2002, the name Diana Ross suddenly reappeared in the headlines. Not in the prestigious columns where she once reigned as a queen of show business, but in the crime section. The woman who once enchanted the world with endless love was arrested for driving under the influence after months of secretly undergoing treatment in a rehabilitation facility. Just 2 days in custody were enough to leave the public stunned. How could a figure honored by Billboard as the female entertainer of the century fall so far, so fast? Yet that downfall was not an ending. It merely cracked open the door to a life layered with secrets few ever imagined. Diana Ross sold more than 100 million records, earned 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and led the Supremes to become the most successful female group in American history. Yet her private life was a maze of contradictions. A half-lifetime love with Berry Gordy that lifted her to legendary heights even as it robbed her of her youth, unfinished marriages, and an invisible gap between the brilliance of the stage and the loneliness waiting behind the curtain. Diana Ross is not just the story of a voice that reshaped popular culture. She is proof of the price of ambition. The higher one climbs, the easier it becomes to lose sight of a place to come home to. And perhaps that is the very secret that makes Diana Ross a figure the world can never stop returning to. She may have later been swept into the dazzling vortex of fame, but to understand why Diana Ross carried within her a desire that was both proud and painfully fragile, one must return to where it all began. A childhood far less serene than the glamorous image the world would one day admire. Diana was born on March 26, 1944, into a large family in Detroit, at a time when the city was still buried in factory smoke and harsh social divides. The street she grew up on was not a cradle for artistic dreams, but a battleground where every child had to grow up quickly or be swallowed whole by circumstance. Cramped living spaces, the worn-out walls of public housing, and the arguments of adults echoing through thin apartment ceilings became the very first backdrop of Diana's life. A backdrop full of noise and short on shelter. Then came the rupture. Just as Diana was a little girl, still counting stars outside her window, her mother fell gravely ill. Tuberculosis, in those days, was not merely a medical fear. It was a hovering question mark over an entire family. To receive treatment, her mother had to leave home, and Diana, along with her siblings, was sent away to live with relatives. There were no explanations long enough, no embrace tight enough to calm the confusion of a child suddenly severed from her mother's arms. That period carved a quiet fracture inside Diana. The older she grew, the more she believed that love was never something one could rely on. Even when her mother recovered and the family reunited, life did not simply mend itself. Money was always scarce, time was always rushed. While other girls her age dreamed freely, Diana was already learning to style hair, mend clothes, and earn extra money through odd jobs. Standing as a teenage girl inside Detroit's upscale department stores, where she became the first black employee, she learned the harshest truth of all. To survive, she had to carve out her own place in the world. Music entered her life not as an artistic calling, but as an escape route. Choir sessions at church, casual harmonies with friends after school, they planted in Diana a peculiar conviction that there was another world beyond Detroit's chipped walls. No one then could imagine that the very voice guiding her out of the neighborhood would lift her to the peak of popular culture, and eventually demand from her a price no one else could fathom. That childhood did not create a diva. It forged a woman who would forever feel compelled to prove she deserved to stay, whether within her family, on the stage, or inside someone's heart. A turbulent childhood did not make Diana shrink into herself. Instead, it taught her to see the world as a door left slightly ajar. If she didn't push hard enough, it would slam shut forever. So at 15, when Florence Ballard suggested forming a singing group with Mary Wilson and Betty McGlown, Diana stepped in like someone who already knew her destiny lay far beyond Detroit. They called themselves the Primettes, a name still unpolished, but their ambition wasn't. Their first performances had no professional lights, just dusty school gyms and clusters of balloons at local sock hops. Yet 4 teenage girls with bouffant hairdos could still make entire rooms fall silent. Winning a talent show in Windsor didn't bring money, but it brought something better: the attention of Robert Bateman, who would later introduce them to Motown. Detroit at that moment was a musical furnace. Every voice wanted out, but not everyone got to see the gate open. Their invitation came from Smokey Robinson, Diana's neighbor. The price of admission sounded trivial, but would end up shifting the course of pop history. They had to let Motown borrow guitarist Marv Tarplin. One guitar player in exchange for a door wide enough to swallow America. None of the girls understood what that bargain would eventually cost, but it didn't stop them from signing. In 1961, the contract became official. The Primettes were reborn as the Supremes, a name suggested by Florence Ballard, sleek, regal, and ready for national radio. Ironically, the name soon became a punchline. Their early singles sank without a trace, earning them a cruel nickname: the no-hit Supremes. Motown's patience ran thin. The gate that had once opened now began to close inch by inch. No one dared say it aloud, but everyone understood. Find a lead voice, or disappear. Diana didn't seize the lead with declarations. Her voice decided for her. In a pop landscape where black female singers were boxed into soul or blues, Diana took a different path. Round, sweet, bright, and smoothed of edges. A pop tone white audiences could listen to without defensiveness. The group's image shifted accordingly. Matching dresses, synchronized smiles, hair sculpted so perfectly it seemed each strand was choreographed for television history. By 1964, the moment they had waited 3 years for finally arrived. Where Did Our Love Go shot straight to #1. They didn't need a second stroke of luck to prove it wasn't a fluke. Baby Love, Stop, In the Name of Love, You Can't Hurry Love. Each track nailed another board into the top of the charts. The Supremes' music was no longer something Americans listened to. It became the pulse of a nation in the throes of cultural industrialization. For the first time, a black female group became a national symbol, breaking racial barriers with a radiance no one had prepared for. But behind the spotlights, another script was unfolding. The closer Diana moved toward the center, the darker the shadows inside the group became. Florence Ballard, the one who named the group, the one who once embodied its soul, began to feel herself pushed out of the very dream she created. Berry Gordy, Motown's mastermind, didn't look at Diana as just an artist. His attention went beyond business. That invisible current rewrote the group's balance. No public arguments were needed. Every recording session, every sideways glance, every moment Diana's vocals were tweaked to better fit the market, told the story for them. By the late 60s, the Supremes were at the peak of pop domination and internally on the brink. No string of hits could save a structure cracked at its foundations. Florence was sidelined, Mary Wilson was suspended between loyalties, and Diana saw clearly that this dream no longer had room for 3. In 1969, the announcement was made. Diana Ross would go solo. No farewell performance, no matter how glamorous, could numb the sting. The Supremes lost their voice. Diana Ross lost her first musical family. And in return, she stepped into a fame-fueled battleground far greater than anything she had ever known. Her solo stardom did not arrive as the birthright of someone who left a group. It felt more like an experiment to see how long Diana could stand without anyone behind her. In 1970, the name Diana Ross appeared for the first time on the cover of her own album, no longer tucked beneath any collective identity. The self-titled debut was a declaration without words. A new persona had been forged. Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand wasn't a chart-shattering explosion, but it was a subtle introduction to the music Diana wanted to pursue, not the formulaic girl group blueprint, but a pop soul sound infused with humanity, aimed straight at emotion rather than choreography or image. Critics weren't sure what to make of this pivot. Was Diana stepping beyond Motown's grasp, or merely testing who she was when she belonged to no one? Her connection to television provided the answer. The TV special. Diana placed her beside the Jackson 5, not as a mentor in the shadows, but as the axis of a new entertainment universe, where a singer wasn't merely someone who sang, but someone who occupied space, commanded attention, and manufactured moments. Every camera angle confirmed it. Diana Ross was no longer part of a group. She was the benchmark by which ambition was measured. Just a year later, the UK surrendered to I'm Still Waiting. Its rise to #1 wasn't just another commercial victory. It was proof that Diana's silky, razor-sharp vocal choices were cutting pathways beyond Motown's borders. People began to understand. Diana wasn't changing to fit the world. The world had to adjust to receive her. The true detonation came in 1972. Diana Ross stepped into the bruised, haunted skin of Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues, not merely performing the role, but resurrecting a wounded soul. A pop diva choosing to embody a jazz legend ravaged by addiction, heartbreak, and a lonely death was not a safe career move. Yet that risk delivered an Oscar nomination, a Golden Globe, and a soundtrack that topped the Billboard 200 and sold more than 2 million copies. Audiences witnessed something the Supremes never allowed them to see. Diana Ross could ache, she could shatter, and still be breathtaking. Her hunger to push boundaries only grew. Touch Me in the Morning, 1973, launched her into mature pop soul orbit, while Diana and Marvin, her album with Marvin Gaye, became a collision of two contrasting musical identities, passion versus discipline, abandon versus control. Behind the scenes, creative skirmishes erupted over vocal delivery, arrangements, and who would inhabit the emotional core of each track. They did not need romance to make music that commanded the industry's respect. In 1974, Diana's image turned another page when she became the first Black woman to co-host the Academy Awards. A historical moment played out before millions, yet only those aware of Hollywood's racial landscape understood the audacity of it. A Black woman standing at the center of America's cinematic power structure. This was not participation, it was occupation. By An Evening with Diana Ross, 1976, the boundaries between music, cinema, fashion, and performance evaporated. The tour earned a special Tony Award, acknowledging that Diana wasn't merely a singer, she was a living manifesto of the multimedia star. She did not perform songs, she performed existence. Then came Love Hangover, detonating the disco era. From a slow, almost hesitant opening, the track suddenly shifted into propulsion, as if Diana tore apart every mold that had ever confined her. It wasn't just a hit, it was a message to the entire industry. Diana Ross did not follow trends. Trends existed to chase her. Love Hangover placed Diana at the helm of disco, but only when the album Diana arrived in 1980 did the world understand she had ceased being a star. She had become a thesis. Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards of Chic attempted something both modern and impossible: transform a Motown icon into the voice of tomorrow. The result was Upside Down, which flipped pop, funk, and disco inside out, and I'm Coming Out, which accidentally became an anthem for the LGBTQ+ community. Diana stepping into the light echoed the private liberation millions had been denied. The irony? Motown doubted the direction, forcing Diana to fight for the original mix to be released. Once again, she wasn't waiting for the world to change. She forced it to move first. Those brilliant hues seemed like the final summit, until Diana faced a different kind of moment. Endless Love, her duet with Lionel Richie. If Diana was the voice of liberation, this ballad was a fragile confession of love that could never be whole. The song topped the Billboard Hot 100 and became her last #1, not because she had run out of power, but because she had reached a peak that demanded a new shape beyond it. In 1981, the unthinkable happened. After 2 decades, Diana left Motown, the home that had carried her from the Brewster Douglas projects onto the cultural map. RCA offered a then-record $20 million deal, not merely for her commercial value, but as acknowledgement that Diana Ross had evolved far beyond the label's mythology. She no longer belonged to any institution but herself. The Jackson 5 albums she once shepherded seemed like distant fragments of a woman who refused to stand still. Silk Electric housed Muscles, written for her by Michael Jackson, a haunted artistic reunion between two souls who knew the price of stardom. Swept Away delivered Missing You, a farewell to Marvin Gaye, whose violent death left Motown gutted. The grief did not break Diana. It became melody, a blade sharpened by sorrow. Then came Eaten Alive, where Barry Gibb and Michael Jackson poured creative voltage into an album that by logic shouldn't exist. Pop, funk, and cinematic tension fused into something unpredictable. Chain Reaction crowned her again in the UK, proving Diana did not survive on legacy. She regenerated it. Amid this creative riot, Diana's name escaped the confines of music. American Music Awards, TV specials, We Are the World, global tours that felt like ceremonial coronations. People began calling her the female entertainer of the century, not because she dominated every field, but because in every field, standards shifted to match her. From the moment she stepped away from the Supremes, Diana Ross has never once looked back. Each album, each reckless decision, was another layer of proof that she never chased the title, the boss. The world was the one that placed it in her hands. Stepping into the new millennium, the name Diana Ross seemed destined to rest comfortably in the realm of nostalgia. The world assumed she would live off the legacy of her past, until the Central Park concert was re-released on DVD. Millions revisited that performance, not merely to hear music, but to witness a woman battling a literal storm on stage. Torrential rain, a slippery platform, a near riotous crowd, and Diana, dressed soaked and clinging to her body, singing to the very end. That DVD was not a commercial product. It was a manifesto. The spotlight that once drained her had become the very place she reclaimed herself. Subsequent tours felt like a resuscitated heartbeat, a reminder that Diana Ross had never left the stage. She had only stepped into the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return. Her rebirth, however, was anything but gentle. In 2002, Diana was arrested for DUI while undergoing treatment at a rehab center. A queen facing the law, sentenced to 2 days in jail, ignited a media firestorm. Some mocked her, others pitied her. The wound was not the jail time. It was the first moment the public saw behind the glamour, into a world where stress, loneliness, and the crushing weight of fame could no longer be disguised. The woman whose music once liberated millions from sorrow was now fighting to free herself. Instead of collapsing, Diana turned injury into fuel. In the mid-2000s, she surfaced in places no one expected, performing with Westlife, duetting with Rod Stewart, becoming the face of Mac's Icon collection and appearing in Tsunami Aid. Each appearance was another mask: diva, legend, mother, warrior, battling time itself. Her concerts were voted greatest music moment, not for technical perfection, but because audiences recognized in her a kind of courage that cannot be faked. The 2010s ushered in not decoration, but reckoning. Her induction into the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame, 2011, marked a reversal. The place that once raised her now bowed to the child it created. The Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, 2012, and her White House performance before multiple U.S. presidents elevated her journey from musical narrative to cultural testimony. When she received the Ella Fitzgerald Award, 2014, one could see in her the living convergence of jazz, soul, and pop. And in 2016, when Barack Obama placed the Presidential Medal of Freedom around her neck, America seemed to acknowledge what history already knew. Some artists don't just alter music. They transform how a nation perceives Black women, fame, identity, and resilience. Diana Ross stepped through each wound and misunderstanding as if every stumble existed only to raise her higher. For her, no chapter is an ending. Each one births an unanswered question. Her story, long presumed complete, was merely preparing its final turn, forcing the world to confront a truth harsher than myth. It felt as though Diana Ross had scaled every summit an artist could reach. Yet the twilight of her career brought confusion. Here was a legend in her 70s behaving like someone just entering the game. She was not nostalgic, not imprisoned by memory. She returned to the stage with the serenity of someone unafraid of comparison. The In the Name of Love tour launched a phase whose energy rattled younger performers. These concerts were not retrospection. They were experiments. Could a voice that once defined soul still penetrate a generation born after Motown? The answer rose from the crowds at the Nobel Peace Prize concert, Essence Festival, and the roaring arena at the U.S. Open. Diana Ross never needed competition. Her existence was victory. Few imagined that, at an age when most stars fade away, she would repeatedly top the Billboard dance chart from 2017 to 2019 with remixes that reframed old songs without losing their Motown soul. A 60s diva ruling modern dance charts was not a miracle. It was proof Diana Ross didn't reside in history. She moved alongside it. Her audacity grew louder with Turn Up the Sunshine, 2022, on the soundtrack of Minions: The Rise of Gru. Diana's voice, once synonymous with couture gowns, floodlights, and grand stages, slipped into a children's animated universe without losing a shred of majesty. That is her peculiar power. Her music doesn't follow eras. Eras bend to acknowledge her. Her performance at the Platinum Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II felt almost allegorical. A music queen beside a monarch. Two reigns, two empires, sharing one stage. A moment many believed was the final punctuation at the end of an era. But Diana Ross refuses endings. Her return to the Royal Albert Hall in 2023 and the Music Legacy Tour confirmed she does not perform to cling to the light, but to prove something simpler. Time may erode great names, but it cannot diminish someone who turned herself into a concept. When Rolling Stone ranked her number 87 on its list of the 100 greatest singers of all time, the circle closed, not with applause, but with an undeniable fact. If someone redefined the role of the Black female performer, if someone transformed fragility into power, individuality into standard, that someone is Diana Ross. It turns out the real fear is not outlasting the spotlight. It is possessing the power to make it shine again. Diana Ross still does that, as if time were merely an irrelevant detail in her design. What makes the final chapters of Diana Ross's life feel paradoxical lies not in the spotlight that follows her, but in the invisible threads it never illuminates. Her endurance over time convinced the public she was a self-contained force, someone who needed no one to exist. Yet the power people perceived in her was born from a private entanglement, one that functioned both as a launch pad and a lifelong debt. Berry Gordy Jr. When they first met at Motown, Diana was still a young woman, with a bright voice, an intelligent gaze, and an ambition she kept tucked beneath her smile. Gordy was older, a man who already understood how stars were constructed. He saw in Diana what Detroit had failed to notice: beauty that could become an icon, charm persuasive enough to seduce white America, and a voice soft as silk yet sharp as wire. Not a talent waiting to be discovered, but something he wanted to own. Their love never erupted publicly. It seeped into artistic choices, business decisions, and the hierarchy of Motown. Diana rose from being just another supreme to becoming the label's golden face, while Gordy became the only person she could lean on in an industry ruled by calculation. Other artists watched her with envy tinged in bitterness, not because she wasn't gifted, but because they believed Gordy's heart was redistributing the spotlight. Florence Ballard saw it first. The fracture within the group didn't begin with music, but with the sense that one woman was being loved too much to remain a teammate. The deeper Diana and Gordy went, the longer his shadow stretched. He opened doors she never dared dream of, and then demanded she prove herself worthy of every step. When Diana became pregnant with Rhonda, born in 1971, she allowed her legal husband at the time, Robert Ellis Silberstein, to be listed as the father. It wasn't betrayal, it was fear. Gordy may have been the man Diana loved, but he was also the god who could build or end her entire career with a single decision in the studio. Rhonda grew up calling Berry Gordy Uncle until age 13, when Diana finally told her the truth. That confession closed a chapter that had lasted over a decade, a love anchored in equal parts passion and power, affection and obligation, protection and control. When Diana left the Supremes and announced her solo career, critics framed it as treachery. The truth was far more tangled. Diana wasn't fleeing Gordy. She was fleeing a love that left no space to breathe. He wanted her contained within Motown. She knew survival required exchanging Motown's Diana for the world's Diana. Their door didn't slam shut. It closed quietly, a silence more dangerous than accusation. Gordy still appeared at milestone events, still smiled with pride when she was honored. They no longer belonged to each other, yet Gordy's fingerprints remained on Diana's existence, in her voice, her gaze, and her determination never to collapse. Not all love must last forever to be destiny. Some only need to exist at the right moment, and Berry Gordy was exactly that. The love powerful enough to launch her into the heavens, and violent enough to leave a scar that never healed. Breaking away from Berry Gordy didn't pull Diana out of the emotional orbit where ambition clashed with the hunger to be loved. As the flashbulbs and praise hardened into pressure, she sought refuge in a quieter harbor. Robert Ellis Silberstein, the man the public simply called Ellis, and the piece she believed might mend what Gordy had broken. Ellis was not a record executive. He didn't own Diana's destiny. He arrived not with power, but with calm, the rare kind of love that dared embrace a woman the entire nation was watching. At first, this difference felt like oxygen. Diana didn't need to perform or prove or brace herself against the gaze of the man who created her. With Ellis, she was allowed to be fragile, a privilege Gordy never granted. Their marriage became a declaration that Diana had found someone who could lift her away from Motown's gravitational pull. Ellis wasn't just a husband, he was a shield. Yet the irony was baked into the wedding itself. Rhonda, the child Gordy fathered, was legally embraced as Ellis's daughter. His signature was both an act of protection and an admission of imperfection. Love that understood its cracks but could not seal them. Two more daughters, Tracy and Chudney, seemed to inaugurate a stable chapter. A home filled with children's laughter, warmth, and a husband who didn't need Diana to be an icon, only a wife. Diana once believed this was her true harbor, the one place where she could unzip the gown that fame never let her remove. But dreams have expiration dates. The spotlight she tried to escape became the silent fault line splitting their union. Ellis loved Diana, but he did not love her universe. By then, her career wasn't a job, it was a cosmos. Promises whispered at night dissolved into tour schedules, late studio sessions, and flights that never paused long enough for dinner. Diana lived between two incompatible truths: the woman who wanted to mother her children and the star who had to survive in a business that punishes absence. Ellis understood, and that understanding hurt more than ignorance. He wasn't jealous of Berry Gordy, he was jealous of the space the stage occupied in Diana's heart. No one can compete with the audience of a legend. One day, they realized they were not walking at the same speed. Their marriage died not from betrayal, but from inevitability. Ellis couldn't drag Diana back to earth, and Diana couldn't betray the nature that demanded she stay in the sky. This was a love with no villains, just two people defeated by fate. Ellis left Diana's life, but not without leaving her a truth she took years to accept. Many men loved Diana Ross, but no one could live beside the shadow that name cast. If Berry Gordy was the flame that ignited her, Ellis was the water that tried to cool her heart. But flames don't burn forever, and no amount of water can anchor someone born to soar. Diana left the marriage with two children, a sealed past, and a question no one could answer. Can an icon ever love like an ordinary woman? The emptiness after her first marriage didn't make Diana wary of love. It only made her long for a different kind of peace. A place without musical calculations, without eyes that saw her as a product of the entertainment industry. The arrival of Arne Næss Jr., a Norwegian businessman, felt like a door opening into a land Diana had never stepped into. Not the stage, but the mountaintop, where human breath mingles with nature, and nobody cares how many awards you have. Arne did not love Diana Ross, because she was Diana Ross. He came to her as a man in love with summits, unshaken by the altitude of her fame. That quiet confidence pulled Diana into an entirely different rhythm. A man not dazzled by the spotlight. A man strong enough to lead her away from it. The feeling of being seen as a human being, not as a brand, melted her. Something neither Gordy nor Ellis had ever truly accomplished. Their 1986 wedding felt like a declaration with real weight. Diana Ross had finally found someone who not only loved her, but wanted to walk beside her into places no one else had reached. She stepped into the role of stepmother to Arne's three children, Katinka, Christopher, and Leona, with a tenderness rarely glimpsed in a star constantly torn between work and private life. Family meals, trips without press releases, children's laughter, these things built the safest chapter she had ever known. When their two sons, Ross Arne, 1987, and Evan Olav, 1988, were born, it seemed Diana had finally touched the simple definition she had chased all her life, a place where a woman is loved for herself, not for her voice. That calm endured until an invisible blade began to slice at the marriage. The loneliness that comes with a man who belongs to distant summits. Arne lived at high altitudes. Diana lived in the depths of the spotlight. Two worlds that once seemed complementary slowly became divided by geography and spirit. The public only saw smiles at events. Diana felt the cracks behind closed doors, where conversations grew shorter, where daily embraces became habit rather than choice. In 2000, the news that Arne had fathered a child with another woman in Norway struck like an icy slap. For a woman who had spent her life fighting to be seen for who she truly was, this betrayal was more than a broken marriage. It was a brutal reminder that even off stage, Diana Ross was still paying for her name. They divorced, but Diana never spoke ill of Arne. That love was not buried by one mistake. It was simply made brittle by time until it could no longer be repaired. The real tragedy didn't begin with the divorce, but with the moment Diana no longer had the right to love him. In 2004, Arne Næss Jr. died in a climbing accident in South Africa, right where he most belonged. Diana lost the only man who had ever made her believe that love could exist outside the stage. He died among rocks. She was left facing a bitter truth. Some men do not leave Diana Ross with words. They leave by dying. From then on, whenever Arne's name came up, Diana's voice didn't tremble with regret. It sounded like someone had touched a locked room inside her. That relationship was more than love. It was proof that even an icon can have a moment of believing she is loved as an ordinary person, until fate takes everything back in its usual merciless style. Many believe Diana Ross only faced storms in music and marriage, but the emotional undercurrents of her private life were even more complicated. After Arne Næss Jr., Diana entered a phase where love was no longer a safe haven, but a place that tested her self-respect and sense of worth. In the public eye, Ross and Cher were irreplaceable icons, two queens of different stages. But the arrival of Gene Simmons, the Kiss frontman, turned that parallel into a silent war. Simmons was drawn into Diana's orbit while still dating Cher. The irony was that Cher had opened that door herself, introducing Ross to Simmons as an act of goodwill. No one knew that this friendly gesture would become the cut that severed a friendship between two legends. Simmons fell for Diana so openly that he couldn't hide his preference, and that pull left Cher feeling betrayed. The public called it a war without declaration, because no one spoke, yet the glances, refusals, and awkward red carpet evasions were enough to form a long-running rift. Diana never answered the press. Cher never made a public statement. But Hollywood understood. A once vibrant friendship had faded out over a man. If that conflict carried the color of pride, then the bond between Diana Ross and Michael Jackson was the softest point in her life. Michael first entered Diana's world as a boy looking up at his idol. When the glow of the Jackson 5 had barely formed, Diana was there, guiding, instructing, shielding. Their connection grew like an invisible cord. Michael saw Diana not as a colleague, not just as a big sister, but almost as a spiritual mother, the one person who understood the price of becoming a symbol. As Michael grew older, rumors began. Had their bond crossed the line between affection and something more? Diana stayed silent, Michael deflected, and that silence turned the rumor into one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. The pain was not in the gossip. It was in Diana watching Michael change, being crushed beneath his own fame, while she stood powerless before a life no one, not even her, could rescue. After Michael's death, Diana was named in his will as a backup guardian for his children, the one detail that told the world exactly where she lived in the King of Pop's heart. As for Smokey Robinson, once a neighbor, a musical mentor, and over time, a forbidden flame in Diana Ross's life, Decades passed, yet whispers of a secret affair lingered like a song that never fades out. Smokey hinted that there was a period when they were too close to be just friends, while Diana locked every answer behind silence. That ambiguity only fed the story, not for scandal's sake, but because people are endlessly fascinated by love nurtured in the dark, where no one is required to answer for the state of their heart. Diana Ross has rarely spoken about any of them, perhaps because she understands something the world still refuses to admit. Fame can turn a glance into a rumor, a smile into a promise, and a moment of weakness into a scar that lasts a lifetime. These relationships did more than stir controversy. They exposed the real Diana Ross, powerful on stage, fragile in life, and always paying dearly whenever she chose to love. At the very moment the world assumed Diana Ross had stepped into the quiet chapter of her life, she did the opposite. 2025 didn't unfold like a farewell to an icon. It arrived like a declaration of war from someone who never believed age was a boundary. The King's Theater in New York became the witness to that anomaly. An 81-year-old woman, hair jet black as if taunting time itself, standing before thousands and singing with a force that burned through every whisper of a final act. The golden lights illuminated the familiar face and revealed what the public had forgotten. Diana did not live on nostalgia. She lived in the present, and that present blazed brighter than ever as she stepped onto the Met Gala 2025 red carpet. Not as a ceremonial guest, completing a legacy, but as the protagonist of a story still being written. Her long white gown embroidered with the names of her grandchildren was not fashion. It was a statement. The greatest triumph of her life was not trophies or charts, but a legacy that knew where it came from. Her return didn't stop at grand appearances. Diana kept singing, not to protect a title, but to fight erasure. The Symphonic Celebration Tour fused her Motown voice with a full orchestra, making audiences feel as though they were witnessing the final evolution of a diva, from pop phenomenon to living work of art. Each sustained note was a message. Music doesn't age. Only listeners grow tired before understanding it. In the second half of the year, Diana moved toward the Hollywood Bowl and stages across America, where applause no longer meant mere enthusiasm. It meant reverence. Some events were abruptly canceled for undisclosed reasons, which only reinforced the truth she had lived by all her life. Never let the world see you weak. Diana Ross never publicized her battles, yet the simple act of continuing to sing at an age when others avoid the mirror was testimony enough. The numbers: 70 million records sold, 18 #1 hits, 2 stars on the Walk of Fame, are only the surface of her legacy. Her true distinction lies not in records, but in how she rewired the language of presence for Black women in entertainment. Before Diana, the stage belonged to men, and Black female voices were auxiliary. After Diana, divas did not just sing, they owned the spotlight without apology, without permission. Diana turned elegance into a weapon. She didn't scream for equality, she redefined the standard. When she walked onto the Oscars in her immaculate white gown, when she turned Central Park into a storm of music, when she wore her hair wild, draped in feathers, belting, "I'm coming out," she wasn't performing. She was delivering a message no generation before hers had ever heard. You have the right to be yourself, even when the world decides you shouldn't exist. She didn't need political speeches. Her existence was political enough. Beyoncé, Whitney Houston, Janet Jackson, Mariah Carey, and countless others who sound nothing like Motown still walk a road she carved. From Dreamgirls on Broadway to Motown museums, to children dancing to Upside Down decades after its release, her imprint doesn't linger as memory. It persists as infrastructure. What haunts the story of Diana Ross is not the gowns nor the stadium cheers. It's the way she redefined survival in a world that only loves perfection. A girl from the Brewster Douglas housing projects who once styled hair to help her mother, a young singer mocked as part of the No-Hit Supremes, only to become the face of Motown, a woman who paid for love with 2 marriages, endured betrayal, and lived under the plumb line of the press, yet never once slipped out of the center of cultural history. Diana did not win because she was favored. She won because she refused to vanish. At 81, when the world waited for a goodbye, she stood on stage and delivered what may well be her final thesis. Life is not measured by how long we last, but by what still echoes after we leave. And now the question is no longer, what did Diana Ross accomplish? It is anyone alive brave enough to live so brilliantly that time itself must remember their name, the way it remembers hers? If you have ever listened to a Diana Ross song, trembled at the opening of Ain't No Mountain High Enough, or seen yourself reflected in I'm Coming Out, Leave Your Feelings Below, legacy isn't medals. It begins the moment one heart touches another, and Diana Ross has done that her entire life.